Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an excellent attacking game to share with you from the Fujitsu Siemens Giants event. This is a rapid game from 2000. On the white end, Vishy Anand playing against Alexey Shirov. All right, let's hop to it. On board, French defense. E5 signals the Steinitz variation. A popular follow-up here is F4. Anand plays this in a different way. He underdevelops. He's now in a spot to meet C5 with C3. He wants to maintain a pawn on D4. And this D4 pawn has a great influence on this D7 knight, significantly restricted. The D7 knight, believe it or not, has already had its fun in this game. It's not going to make another move for the rest of the game. We continue with knight C6, F4 only now, a clear focus on the D4 square, intersection square for both sides, bishop E7, and now prep work for a queenside expansion, putting the question to the C5 pawn, trying to resolve this pawn tension. Shirov castles, and Anand continues here with H4. We're going to see more than one aggressive point behind this soon enough. But before we get there, I'd like to draw your attention to the other wing. Suppose A3 was followed immediately with B4. Here's the pop quiz. What move would you play here as white? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, with A5, black is ready to capture on B4, bring the rook to life. If this capture is allowed, any one of these three pieces will eventually have access to B4. White has a clever response in this situation, though, and it is a positional pawn sacrifice, a very important positional pawn sacrifice to be familiar with, and that is B5, ensuring the A file is not peeled open and that none of these pieces will have access to B4. And this gives a reading of about +1 for white. This extra pawn in the end that black has, the B pawn, isn't a full pawn. It's a beyond half dead B pawn. Look at the grip the white pieces have over this hole on B5. This B pawn's going nowhere. Okay, what I just highlighted there, again, a very important positional pawn sacrifice to be familiar with. In this game, it's H4. What's the aggressive idea behind H4? Aggressive idea? Well, now knight G5 is in the air. In the event of bishop captures knight, or even a pawn captures knight, white's in a spot to take towards the center, and black will have to cope then with a completely opened H-file. Fishing pole-like ideas are now available to white because of H4. Another note behind H4 is revealed with white's next move. He continues here with rook H3, a simple idea in the air of possibly rook G3, targeting the heart of black's kingside. Now, before we get there, before I put on rook H3, once F6 is in, there should be, playing on the white side here, in your mind, one square should really be lit up, and that is F2. At any moment, we could have this capture, and the rook springs to life. The rook and the queen, however indirect it may be, they intersect on F2. There's a bunch of stuff in the way, pawns, 4 pawns, and a knight. There could certainly be a problem on F2. So in the game, we have rook H3, follow-up here is knight to A5. How might this square be a problem for white? Let's say instead of the move played in the game, knight to A5, let's say black starts to chop away in the center, capturing on D4, and then E5, and then taking with rank number 2 knight on e5, don't take with the knight. You're going to need this guy around to prevent these two major pieces from seeing f2 directly. Okay. In this game, after rook h3, it is knight to a5. The computer suggestion, there is somewhat of a shift in the evaluation after knight to a5. What it prefers is a5, a4, in some cases offering a queen exchange with queen b3, or only after having this pawn on a4 does it want to go in for knight to a5. All right, in this game, it is knight a5 straight away, focusing on this b3 hole. White does not allow the knight to dive in there, plays b4 now. Much more forceful now, b4, compared to the b4 move I highlighted earlier. b4 is targeting the knight. No time to take on d4 in this case. It is c takes b4. And now white can take towards the center and has a half-open file to play with. Knight c4. And the follow-up here is knight to g3. Extremely important moment now in the game. Shirov follows up with a5. What is considered best is a piece sacrifice. The computer recognizes that this is not only an excellent structure for white, but white has excellent pieces. This guy is soon going to be a nightmare for black. On d3, pointing at h7, guess who's not around to try and tame white's light square bishop? This guy doesn't even have a move. The suggestion by the engine is to chop away on this e5 square, playing this imbalance, a knight for 2 pawns imbalance. Considers it around an even position. Okay, not a direction we go. Instead, it is a5, eventually threatening to take on b4, but black still has to sort out the pin on the a file. Bishop d3, white is there first, attacking the king. There's a serious threat to now take on h7. Shirov recognizes this. He shuts down the diagonal. He plays f5 here. If you don't play f5, let's say you play a different move. Let's say you go with h6 here, preventing a sacrifice on h7. White could continue with knight h5 and rook to g3, really keying in on that g7 square. Some other move, if you don't try and stop bishop h7, let's say there's this capture on e5. Here's how the sacrifice can play out. Bishop takes h7, can hit, follow up knight g5. If bishop takes knight, we're of course taking towards the center, and following with queen h5, g6, queen h8. A winning attack for white. Another option for black is to meet this check with an immediate king to g8. This is slightly different. The queen could come in now to h5. Black has this defensive move, counter, attacking the queen, stopping the mate on h7, but white in this position can afford this quiet response, queen g6, and nearby for white is now knight h5, keying in on an additional square, g7. How would black defend that? Queen c7, knight h5. This is one way you could defend, but after pawn takes here, white's going to get the material back and still have a winning attack. Okay, Shirov understands this, understands the strength of bishop captures h7, so he shuts the diagonal down. In the process, a weak square is created. g5 is now opened. White hops right to it. Knight g5. The follow-up here is rook to d8. Now, if instead of rook to d8, the knight is captured, this is an important variation. If bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and then g6, Stopping queen to h5, how would you continue the attack here as white? Feel free to pause the video. Okay. The attack continues with knight h5. And white's going to be able to get into this f6 square and eventually have a connected passed f pawn. The knight is poisoned here. This would be too much for black to defend. Rook f7, there's g6, and it's getting broken down. Pawn takes will be mate. And in the event of rook g7, you can take on h7 and then sweep into e8. So this knight jump into h5 is an important idea to be familiar with. In this game, no bishop takes knight. Instead, rook d8. Now comes queen h5. Two squares in mind. The queen and knight are focused on f7 and h7. Now the knight is removed. And we don't take towards the center here. Anand plays it in a different way. He has a focus now. He shifts his focus to this g7 pawn. If you take with the pawn, black is able to resist somewhat, at least with knight to f8. It's not a clear path forward for white in this situation. If you continue with g6 and h6, it's recommending now run in reverse, get going with these g4 and then f5 ideas, much more slower attacking play for white. What is best is what is played in this game, and that is to capture with the queen. King in on g7, also opening up knight h5 and then rook g3. This all comes very fast. From here, rook f8, knight h5. Black is there in time to defend the mate threat. Rook g3, and now g6. Where to go from here? We got three aggressive pieces. Here's how white invites a fourth one into the mix. He first eliminates the c4 knight, and then goes with a positional pawn sacrifice, one that I highlighted earlier. He pitches the b pawn. Make sure the a file doesn't open up. All he wants is a clear, an open diagonal for this dark square bishop. He gets just that. Queen takes b, bishop a3, and there really isn't any defense to this eventual sacrifice on g6. Black's last move here, b6. What other try is there here for black? If the knight moves, let's say to f8, that would give up the f6 square. And this knight could immediately pounce with check, and then h5 is available. And this h-pawn feels like it's really a piece contributing to an attack. So, in this game it is b6, queen h6, bishop b7, and now we get this sacrifice on g6. Not much that black can do about it. Gets the piece back. Threatening mate on g7. Black's there in time, but check out now this cool final move. Here we go. It is bishop f8, and Shirov resigns. What is going on here? There is a mate threat with bishop to g7. This guy could be captured in two ways, but it's going to still lead to checkmate. Let's say the bishop isn't captured. Let's say queen b2 is played here. Here's how the checkmate plays out. We would have bishop g7 check, bishop f6, discovered check, and bishop g5, followed up with taking towards the center for checkmate. That's the mating idea. If rook takes bishop, game over. And if knight takes bishop, we would have knight f6, threatening queen takes rook, checkmate. What does black do about that? Any rook move will result in a check and then checkmate. So, what did you think of this one? Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.